Hey everybody, Mary Grothe here, CEO of Sales BQ. Welcome to this episode of the Quota Crusher podcast. This time, instead of us bringing on a quota crusher or just making you listen to me the entire time, we have a sales expert. She's a published author. She has an incredible story, 2 huge books in circulation right now that we'll deep dive into, but I don't like canned intros, so I'm going to let her introduce herself. And I'm so excited to welcome Lisa Magnuson to the Quota Crusher podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Mary. I'm really happy to be part of your podcast and have talk to your listeners.
So let us all in on everything that you have done in your journey that has made you the sales expert that you are today.
Well, I really spent my whole career in sales and sales leadership. And really for most of that career, my focus has been on big deals, those big accounts. Some people call them whale accounts, like my good friend and colleague, Barbara Weaver-Smith with the Whale Hunters. Some people call them elephants. In my new book, I refer to them as your 5X deals, 5 times, your average deal size. But that is where my passion is, and my whole consulting practice for the past 15 years is built around those big deals.
I love that. So where did you get this experience? Who were you working for?
So I kind of came up in my sales career through Xerox. I spent a solid 12 years there. I think I did 12 different jobs in 12 years. But I was really lucky. I think my second job at Xerox, my second sales job was as an account executive, and I got to work with the national account manager for Clorox in Oakland, California. And he was kind enough to bring me on executive calls. And I remember distinctly my first meeting with my contact at Clorox, downtown Oakland, California, walk into this big building. They were big news there. And met with this contact for the first time, and she placed an order for like 25 copiers. And I almost fell off my chair. Like didn't even, just to put it in perspective, my budget was like 3 a month, and she was placing an order for 25. And so very early, I discovered the power of big deals and big accounts.
Oh my gosh, your entire year's quota in one conversation.
Talk about quota busters.
I will say that. I will completely agree. So like you, my upbringing was in a big we were a Fortune 1000 company. I worked for the payroll company called Paychecks. And I was in the mid-market to start and had a pretty fair quota, not too much, about 150 grand a year. And average revenue per sale was probably less than 10 grand. So maybe bringing on just more than one client a month. And I know that there were a couple of large accounts that I won in my first year, and it really helped me get to my first year. I sold 758,000 against the 150 quota. Right. It was shocking to a lot of people, but I certainly didn't do that via 400 sales, right? There were a few that really moved the needle for me. And just like you, I couldn't believe it. I think one of my first largest deals was between 75 and 100 grand. And I was beside myself. Like, how do I get more of these? We need to make this happen. But you're right. Something transitioned for me too in listening in on the executive conversations. Because in the line of work I was in, you could choose to sell to more of the functionary or end user versus an executive. And I know that there's a lot of people that have a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach, different ways in engaging in a mid-market or an enterprise sale. But one of your 2 books right now that is out circulating is really built for salespeople, and you're focusing on the topic of executive engagement. So talk to me about what transpired in that early career that really helped shape what you're bringing forth to salespeople today, because I do fully believe executive engagement is wildly different than what a lot of people are taught in a traditional sales conversation.
Well, the reason why I wrote the book, The Top Seller Advantage, Powerful Strategies to Build Long-Term Relationships, Executive Relationships, was because I moved past my Clorox days and worked with a lot of account teams around big deals. And what I noticed over the years is, the account team would work so hard to get to an executive and take, months, maybe even more than a year in some cases, have the executive meeting, everybody on the sales, on the sales side wanted to go, you had to turn people away, even VPs and executives. It's like, no, we can only have 3 people call on this executive. And had the meeting. After the meeting, everybody was like, high fives. That was the best call we've ever had. And the reason why they felt like that is because they were sitting in that executive C-suite and they were talking to this super important person. And of course, they followed up with a thank you and all that. But they did not engage that executive over time. They didn't cultivate that executive relationship. And so flash forward, a year down the road or 2 years down the road, same team, same account. And it's like, we have this big opportunity, but we need to get to this executive. Well, they had to start from scratch. The executive had no memory of that meeting. And so they literally had to start from scratch. And so my book and really my philosophy in working with teams, account teams, and doing, war room work is, let's get to the executive, and that's hard, but let's engage that executive appropriately over time. And there's ways to do that. And and if you do it the right way, it's so rewarding and it's not hard. And so whenever you have that next opportunity or you want to engage that executive, you can email that person and they will meet with you again. They know you, they view you as a valuable person. And so that is the whole sort of emphasis, behind both my book and also, how I work with clients.
Something powerful in just changing the conversation when you're at that executive level. Can you pinpoint on the discovery side of it, what do you think the biggest adaptation for a rep is from traditional discovery questions or needs analysis questions with more of the functionary team, if you will, versus in the executive conversation?
The executive conversation, and everybody, knows this, it requires so much preparation because you are not going, there's so many things, there's so many ways that can go wrong, and the executive will actually never meet with you again or your team. And so I went out and talked to executives, and as part of writing that book, and I include a lot of the interviews in the book as well. I said, what would cause you to take a meeting with a salesperson? And what would cause you to, and what would it take for that meeting to be valuable? And what would cause you to leave your door open to them for future meetings? And they told me, and so the answer to that question in general is the salespeople have to be prepared with valuable information to talk about with the executive. They can't use it as a discovery call, in the way they would do with somebody else. Maybe high level discussion about where the executive's priorities are, where the executives see their organization going, what are the initiatives that have already been sanctioned in their organization, who's responsible for those initiatives. Maybe recognizing the people that you work with in the executive's company, if it's a current customer. Those are all things executives, the one thing that they value is their time. And so you better start on time and you better finish on time. As a matter of fact, most of the executives that I talk to said, if you want to really make an impression, finish early. Finish your meeting early, walk away, and then, follow up. And one of the things that has to happen in that meeting is you have to ask the executive, what would be valuable in terms of staying in touch with you? What kinds of things, when are the kinds of times that we should reach out to you? What do you want to know from us? What's appropriate? And make sure that that's part of the meeting, that you ask them how to engage with them over time. They'll tell you. So I'm a big believer in the account team. The account team, if the account team discusses all this, they will get it right. They'll get the agenda right. They'll do the proper background to really get the conversation right.
There's so many powerful nuggets in what you just said, and I'm going to pull out one that I think is, my personal opinion, the most important thing is valuing their time and having very clear cut, dry expectations for what's to be accomplished in the meeting. I now running a firm that has 12 people. I am a CEO. I get to make buying decisions. And I have a lot of salespeople that want to engage in a sales conversation for their various products and services. I usually shut down the noise because they only try to solicit me once. They don't understand the value of a multi-touch cadence. So I typically can just ignore their first outreach and then I go hear from them again, which is great. And then I had one guy that was very persistent and he followed almost to a T what we teach from a multi-touch prospecting cadence. I loved it. So I gave him the meeting. And Lisa, your schedule might look like mine. I don't know, but I'm booked back to back to back to back all day long, and I'm extremely purposeful with how my calendar is set. And in my business, time is money. I don't mess around with that calendar. He asked for 30 minutes. I blocked him for 30 minutes. I had a meeting that went right to the 30, and it's on the front and back. So we start this conversation. He does not verify the length of meeting. He does not ask about any expectations for what we're going to accomplish, set any sort of agenda. He didn't even delve into why we were talking. About 17 minutes into the conversation, he's still in what I would refer to as a rapport building stage. And I'm sitting there checking the time, thinking, if I wanted a friend, I can do this at another time. And I just felt as an executive that this person was just not even being respectful of my calendar. Then I answered a question that he had asked, just again, more rapport building about my background. He kept talking, and right at the 30 minutes, I stood up and I shook his hand and I said, thanks. Nice to get to know you. And the look on his face was of utter shock. As in I was the person being rude or abruptly ending a meeting. He had no time management. Oh my gosh. I'm standing there like, I have another meeting to go to. And then he was fumbling and baffled and trying to understand why I was walking out, and to the tone that he was like blaming me for not giving him the time of day and ending the meeting. And I thought, how backwards is this right now? You're trying to sell to me. And so that moment, whereas I've always known as a mid-market seller, especially having the range of selling down to the end user level, all the way through mid-level management and to executives, I've always known how critical it is to ensure you have an understanding of everyone's ability to commit to what length of time in the meeting, because just because you book an hour doesn't mean that the 8 people sitting in the room can all attend for the hour. Sometimes somebody can only be there for the first 15 minutes. Sometimes somebody is joining 30 minutes late on that team. I mean, there's so much that you have to verify and understand in the beginning when it comes to who's attending for what length of time, but then also having a list of requirements for what everyone is hoping to get out of the meeting and staying true to that and abiding by it, and having to pivot and potentially shifting what you came with an agenda based on who's going to be in the chair at what point, and making sure that everybody's needs are met, everyone is spoken to, everyone feels heard, and that together as a team, your team, their team, are coming together to a solution and a buying decision. Yes, that can take more than one meeting, but having that alignment in the conversation.
Yep.
What you said, I just wanted to make sure that we unpack that, because it is so powerful. And the higher up the food chain you're going, time, absolute number one, most critical thing that they care about. And in that time comes their assessment of you. Are you bringing them value, or are you, quote unquote, wasting their time? So that brings in the secondary comment that you said. I have seen hundreds of sales trainers like you and me and advocates for better sales performance that use this term, this phrase, bring them value, bring them value, bring them value. But until you firmly understand the day in the life of your buyer, the mindset that they're in, and that radio station playing in their head, WIIFM, what's in it for me, understanding that they have problems that you solve. And if you're speaking to anything else other than that and making it super clear, it could be perceived as a waste of time. So I have a feeling that your book is packed with nuggets that people have got to read and learn. I just felt like your synopsis there was great. So that's just one of your 2 books. You have your Sales Leader Playbook.
Just not to interrupt you, but you just summarized what all the executives that I interviewed in however many minutes that was. They said pieces of every single thing you just said, including those, bad stories. And, one just resource before we move, to my other book that we want to discuss a little bit is, I have a really good 2-page pre-call plan guide on my website, and your listeners can get that for free. And I use it with my clients every day. I mean, there's almost not a day that I don't do that kind of work with my clients. And, if it's an executive, it's going to be a lot more people. It's the account team, a lot more work goes into it, maybe more than the 2 pages. But for every call, the 2-page planning guide, they can download that at my website. It's a fillable PDF, super easy, but it really helps people just avoid all those bad things that you just talked about.
I love it. Our community of listeners always enjoys a freebie. And while we're just on the topic, what is the website so people know where to access those resources?
Yeah, it's www.toplinesales.com. They can also click through to Amazon if they're interested in any of my books, including the executive engagement book. But they can download that 2-page fillable PDF pre-call plan, and I update that all the time. And the most current version is available for download for free on my website.
That's amazing. And I wanted to throw that resource in because, sometimes people are listening to this on their commute. They're like, shoot, I've got to go into this meeting and I don't know where I'm supposed to go get that. So I wanted to interject on that. So that's absolutely perfect. So let's transition into the second book. And I cannot wait for you to share more about it because at Sales BQ, we are huge about playbooks. We build playbooks for marketing teams. We build them for sales teams. We build them for sales enablement, sales ops, in-house sales training, and we build them for customer success. Without a playbook, how does the team have direction? You have salespeople that come together from different walks of life, and they have different experience levels. They have maybe mid-market, enterprise, small business, transactional, relationship sales. Maybe they worked in a big office. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were remote. Maybe whatever. We all have these different backgrounds, so you just have a melting pot of styles, experiences, and approaches. Yet you want to manage everybody to a single scorecard and results. Well, if you don't have the playbook to get to that point, and if you're not having an approach that's unified from the sales leader perspective, and you're bringing this team together. Now, I'm never going to be a fan of trying to coach everybody the exact same way, or fit them all into it, because we're all human beings and we're all very unique, and the way that we sell should all be celebrated because we do it differently and we're amazing. However, there's a thought to a playbook, and what's cool here is you aligned it with your experience being in these larger deals. So there's something very unique about this. So please tell us about what you assembled in this book.
Yeah, I mean, what I did to build this sales leader playbook. So it's the book is for sales VPs, sales directors, managers, but also account team quarterbacks. So it has a component for sellers as well. But I went out and interviewed 41 sales VPs, and I asked them about their goals, and I asked them about their challenges, and I asked them about where they struggle with big deals. And the interesting thing, and you just hit the nail on the head. So most sales organizations have a playbook. Most sales organizations agree with what you just said, that you have to have a playbook. If you're going to expect predictable, repeatable results, you've got to have that playbook, because that's the thing that leads to those outcomes that everybody's looking for. But what was interesting with the 41 sales VPs that I spoke with is they all expect their sellers to sell from a playbook, and they have a sales playbook, but they do not have a sales leader playbook. And so, in talking with them, there were some really interesting things that came out of those interviews. And I've been a sales VP twice, and I also work with sales VPs all day long. So it was, I thought I knew most of them. There's some things that really came out. But so my book is a sales leader playbook based on what I found in talking with those 41 sales VPs for around driving those big deals. I call them the 5X deals, as I mentioned before. So it's what needs to occur to really set your organization up to be an engine that repeatedly and predictably can deliver big deals. versus, you just happen to kind of stumble on one or two, and those are your banner accounts, and everybody talks about them, and only the best, account executives involved with them. You really want to have an engine, a culture around driving these big deals. And that's the book that I wrote. It's everything that goes into that. Sales leaders told me, 97% of them told me that would be incredibly valuable, and that they do not have it. So I'm hoping that it'll have a really big impact. I've gotten great feedback so far.
One thing that I have great appreciation for of what you've done is I know that you're very smart and you have a lot of credibility going into this. You could probably have written these books just on your own intuition and knowing. But the fact that you went out and did the amount of interviews that you did to validate what you were believing and to have data behind what you're presenting to our sales community, I just feel like it's so valuable, because there are some wicked smart sales experts and they have a lot of really great intuition, and they sometimes have these focuses that they're quite brilliant in. And I know that you're the same, but the fact that you went out, I cannot imagine how much time, 41 conversations with very busy, hard to get on their calendar sales leaders, and not to mention the prep work, the follow through, the compiling of the data. This was no small feat. And I just want the audience to understand that what you've done is a tremendous lift for them. And these are two books that they need to read, and I couldn't agree with you more. We have got to be investing in our sales leaders. There is so much content and so much out there in the open market to digest, and so much that has been built for sales teams and those executing the sale. But from a sales leadership perspective, I think you've brought something extremely powerful. So I highly encourage our sales community and our listeners to take advantage of these two. So we're right about time for our podcast today. I try to keep it within people's commute time, or if they're working out right now. And so I just would love for you to put a bow on this. Is there anything that you didn't share that you're dying to share before we wrap up? And then secondly, if not, how do people connect with you?
Yeah, so there's two things, one for sellers and one for sales leaders. Sellers, do the pre-call planning. It's a game changer for all your calls. Obviously, for your executive calls, use my guide, use somebody else's guide, doesn't matter. Do the pre-call planning. So that's for the salespeople out there. For the sales leaders, you know what? There's a lot in my playbook, but if you want to really just get started, start with war rooms, start with account strategy sessions, because they bring so much with them. They actually have this huge multiplier effect. So just by committing to it for the year, not a giddy up and whoa, not a flavor of the month or the quarter, for the year, map them out, commit to them, and you have to lead that charge. And if you do that, a lot of good's going to come from it. There's a lot more, but that's a stake in the ground that you can make, and everybody knows, how to do that.
Couldn't agree more. Yes, I am nodding. For those of you that are listening to audio only right now, I'm in complete agreement. I love that. So wrap us up and take us home.
So thank you for for the discussion, and people can reach out to me. I've just updated my website, last year in preparation for the book. So I've got they can download a free chapter. There's a special bonus for people that buy the book off Amazon. There's links to Amazon. There's the pre-call planning guide. I'm also a sales expert on the Bright Talk network, and so I've got 8 webinars out there from last year. I'm committed to 12 this year. And so lots of ways to connect, and if you're looking for training or consulting or war room services, they can contact me directly from the website as well.
That's so beautiful. And find her on LinkedIn. And ultimately, I'm just going to say that you're a huge giver to this community. I cannot believe you are upping from 8 to 12 webinars. I'm hard pressed to squeeze in 2. So I am very impressed with you, and really highly encourage everybody, go digest her content. She's not messing around. She's filling a gap Large deals are no joke, and I highly recommend that everybody follow through on that connection, especially leveraging your free resources as a minimum. So I will wrap us up. Thank you for being here today, and I will tell our listeners that we're excited here as we launch season 2 of the Quota Crusher podcast. We're so thankful that you're engaged. If you know of a guest or someone that you would like on the show, please send them our way. We want to unpack their greatness so that all of you can benefit and learn from that. Of course, you can find out more about SalesBQ at salesbq.com or me at marygrossi.com. Thank you, everybody.